October 14th, 1942. Midnight in the Iron Bottom Sound, the treacherous waters off Guadalcanal's northern coast. The air hangs heavy with the salt of the Pacific, mixed with the acrid tang of diesel exhaust from the PT boat's idling engines. Standing on the deck of PT-109, eyes strain into the inky blackness where the Solomon Islands melt into the sea. The moon is a sliver, barely illuminating the swells that rock the fragile wooden hull, 80 feet of plywood and hope armed with torpedoes meant for bigger prey. Tonight, the enemy isn't a destroyer or a cruiser. It's something slyer, lower, deadlier in its subtlety. The radio crackles softly, a whispered warning from Henderson Field, Tokyo Express incoming. Barges sighted, running the slot. Tension coils in every gut aboard. Skipper Lieutenant William Libanow scans the horizon through binoculars, his face etched with the fatigue of endless patrols. The sleepless nights that have aged him beyond his 26 years. Eyes sharp, boys, he mutters, voice low over the hum of the 3 Packard V-12 engines purring beneath the deck. These are no ordinary supply runs. The Japanese Daihatsu landing barges, squat and armored, skim the waves like armored turtles. Their shallow drafts, hugging the water to evade the Mark 8 torpedoes that plunge too deep, harmlessly beneath them. As the first silhouettes emerge from the gloom, perhaps a dozen barges, laden with troops, ammunition, and rice for the starving Japanese garrison on Guadalcanal, the throttle opens up, the boat leaping forward with a roar that shatters the night. The water sprays up in white plumes, cold and stinging against skin as the distance closes. Machine gunners man the twin 50 calibers, fingers itching on triggers. But everyone knows the drill. Those bullets will ricochet off the barge's reinforced plating like pebbles off a tank. Last week, PT-38 tried the same, unloading everything they had, only to watch the barges slip away unscathed, unloading their cargo under the cover of dawn, while frustrated crews cursed their impotence. The lead barge looms closer now, its outline sharpening, 40 feet long, belching smoke from a diesel engine, crewed by Imperial Japanese Navy sailors who spot the approaching boat too late. A sharp veer brings the PT in close, hearts pounding, as Libanow shouts orders, torpedoes away. The tubes cough, launching the fish into the dark water with a hiss and a splash. But the outcome is already anticipated. They'll miss low, exploding harmlessly in the depths or not at all, their faulty magnetic detonators failing again. A persistent defect that has plagued the Navy since before the war began. The barge's gunners open up, tracers arcing through the night like angry fireflies, pinging off the boat's thin skin. Wood splinters near the rail, and heads duck instinctively. The sharp crack of return fire from the .50 calibers drowning out the shouts of frustration and rage. This is the nightmare of the slot. The narrow channel between the islands where the U.S. Navy's Mosquito fleet, these plucky PT boats, fights a guerrilla war against an enemy that won't stand and fight fair. Built by Elko or Higgins, these boats are fast, up to 40 knots but fragile as eggshells. Armed with 4 torpedo tubes, depth charges, and those machine guns, they're designed to punch above their weight against capital ships. Yet here in the Solomons, the Japanese have adapted with cunning efficiency. Nighttime resupply runs with these barges, evading the big guns of cruisers and destroyers, slipping through like ghosts to reinforce their hold on Guadalcanal, slowly strangling the American forces holding Henderson Field. As the PT peels away from the barge, engines screaming at full throttle, a near miss from an enemy shell sends a geyser erupting beside the hull, drenching the deck in cold seawater. "We need something bigger," someone yells over the din. Perhaps it's Ensign Barney Ross, wiping salt from his eyes, his voice hoarse from shouting over the engine noise. The barges vanish into the murk, their mission half complete, while the boat limps back to base at Tulagi, hull peppered with holes but no kills to claim, another night of futility added to the growing tally of failures. Dawn breaks over Henderson Field, the captured airstrip that's the prize of this bloody campaign, revealing the wreckage of constant bombardment, crashed planes dotting the runway, Marines digging in against the next assault, their faces gaunt with exhaustion and near starvation. And among the twisted metal of a downed Bell P-39 Airacobra, its nose crumpled but the fuselage intact, an idea begins to spark in the minds of those who see it. The mechanics at the field, grease-stained and inventive, eye the fighter's armament with increasing interest. That 37mm M4 cannon protruding from the nose, fed by a belt of high-explosive shells. It's a beast, designed to shred enemy aircraft at close range with devastating effect. But what if it could be repurposed? Lieutenant Commander Alan Montgomery, overseeing PT operations, hears the whispers circulating among his officers and enlisted men. "We're getting slaughtered out there," he confides to his senior staff during a late-night briefing in his cramped tent office. "Those barges are armored up front. Our 50s aren't cutting it, not even close. But that cannon, it could punch through at point-blank range, tear them apart like tin cans." Back on the boat, as the crew swabs the deck and patches the holes with whatever materials can be scrounged, the frustration boils over into desperate conversations. Guadalcanal hangs by a thread. The Marines are low on everything from ammunition to medical supplies, and every barge that gets through tightens the noose around Henderson Field. The Japanese call this route the Tokyo Express, but to the American forces, it's a lifeline the enemy is choking off piece by piece. Something has to change, and fast, before the island is lost and all the blood shed for it becomes meaningless. November 2nd, 1942. The humid dawn air over Henderson Field clings to skin like a damp blanket as boots squelch in the red Guadalcanal mud that's been churned by endless truck tires and marine boots into a slippery morass. The field itself is organized chaos. Seabees bulldozing coral to lengthen the runway. Pilots from the Cactus Air Force scrambling to their F-4F Wildcats and P-39 Airacobras as another Japanese air raid siren wails in the distance, its mournful cry a daily reminder of danger. Shells from offshore Japanese battleships still occasionally whistle overhead, reminding everyone that the island is far from secure, that death can arrive from any direction at any moment. A walk toward the boneyard at the edge of the strip reveals where wrecked aircraft lie like fallen giants. A P-400 with its propeller bent from a belly landing, an SBD Dauntless missing a wing and leaking hydraulic fluid, and there, half buried in foliage and vines, a Bell P-39 Airacobra. It's olive, drab paint scorched black from fire, cockpit canopy shattered into crystalline fragments, but the long barrel of its 37 Merzen-Mirio M4 cannon still protruding defiantly from the propeller hub. The gun catches the eye of Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3's maintenance personnel, including Lieutenant Henry Hank Brantingham and his crew from PT-59, who stand staring at the same wreckage with growing excitement. "Look at that thing," Brantingham says, wiping sweat from his brow with a grease-stained sleeve. His eyes locked on the cannon. Fires 30 rounds a minute, high-explosive shells that'll punch through steel plate like butter. Bigger than anything we've got on our boats right now. The idea hits like a lightning bolt in the tropical heat, electrifying everyone who hears it. Back at the PT base, a cluster of tents and Quonset huts hidden under palm fronds to avoid Japanese air reconnaissance, the talk spreads fast through the ranks. Skipper Lieutenant Lester H. Gamble gathers his officers around a wooden crate serving as a makeshift table. Maps and diagrams spread before them. "Those Daihatsu barges have 12mm armor up front," he explains, sketching rough diagrams on a scrap of paper. "Our 50 caliber rounds just spark off it, barely leave a dent. But this 37mm, at 500 yards, it'll tear them apart, maybe even at longer range." No one waits for permission from Pearl Harbor or higher command. By afternoon, a work party hauls the cannon, still attached to its nose section, from the wrecked P-39 using a borrowed marine tractor that coughs black smoke. The gun weighs over 200 pounds, complete with recoil mechanism and belt feed, but the PT crews are used to jury-rigging solutions from whatever materials are at hand. Under the watchful eye of armament specialist, torpedoman's mate First Class Vincent Vinny Caputo, they cut away the forward deck plating on PT-45, an Elco 77-footer that's seen better days. Its hull scarred from near misses, and patched in a dozen places. Sparks fly as welders fashion a crude pedestal mount from scrap steel salvaged from destroyed equipment, bolting it dead center on the bow, where it will have clear fields of fire. The cannon sits high, muzzle peering over the edge like an angry snout, fed by a 30-round clip of M54 high-explosive shells salvaged from the Airacobra's stores, and whatever additional ammunition can be scrounged from other wrecked aircraft. They even paint over the aircraft insignia with marine green paint, adding a hasty skull and crossbones emblem for good measure, a defiant symbol of their new capability. Balance is a concern. The boat's already top-heavy with torpedo tubes and depth charges, but a quick test run in the harbor shows she handles acceptably. The Packard engines compensating for the added weight forward with raw power. Word reaches Commander Arleigh Burke's staff through informal channels, but instead of rebuke or demands for proper authorization, there's quiet approval from officers who understand desperation. If it works, one aide mutters to another, we'll make it official retroactively. That night, as rain drums on the tent roofs and distant artillery rumbles from the Guadalcanal River front where Marines battle Japanese positions, the crews load extra ammo boxes and check every system repeatedly. The shift in morale is palpable, frustration turning to anticipation, hopelessness transforming into determination. These aren't just torpedo boats anymore, they're turning into something meaner, something that can finally bite back at those elusive barges that have tormented them for months. The Japanese, meanwhile, grow bolder with each successful run. Intelligence reports another Tokyo Express run brewing. Destroyers escorting dozens of Daihatsu, packed with reinforcements for Colonel Shigetoshi Miyazaki's troops digging in around Coley Point. If they land unopposed again, the Marines' flank could crumble, potentially forcing a withdrawal from Henderson Field itself. But now, lurking in the shadows of Tulagi Harbor, PT-45 and her sisters wait, the cold steel of that salvage cannon gleaming under floodlights as final adjustments are made. The devil's about to get its teeth, and the night will soon belong to those who dare to use them. November 7th, 1942. 23:30 hours. Just north of Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, the tropical night presses down like a hot, wet shroud, oppressive and absolute. The only light coming from faint star glimmer on the black water and the occasional phosphorescent wake trailing behind PT-45 as she ghosts through the slot at 20 knots. Lieutenant Lester Gamble stands at the con, his eyes locked on the green glow of the radar repeater, a new secret toy just installed on a few boats that gives them a technological edge. Contact bearing 020, range 6,000 yards, the radarman whispers, his voice tense. Multiple small echoes, barges, definitely barges. The forward position behind the makeshift shield welded around the salvaged 37 mm cannon offers little protection, but it's where the action is. The air smells of hot oil, cordite residue from test fires, and the sharp tang of nervous sweat that comes before combat. Beside the gun position, gunner's mate Vincent Caputo checks the 30-round clip one last time, his hands steady despite the stakes, despite knowing that everything depends on whether this improvised weapon actually works in combat. Loaded with he murmurs to himself and anyone listening. Let's see if this bastard works like we think it will. Gamble eases the throttles forward gradually. The three Packards growl louder, pushing the boat to 35 knots as she closes the gap, the hull slapping against small waves. No running lights, no silhouettes against the horizon. The PT boats are painted matte black now, shadows among shadows, invisible until the moment of attack. The Japanese convoy resolves into view through binoculars. Two old destroyers screening a ragged line of 15 Daihatsu landing barges, each one crammed with troops and supplies. Engines chugging steadily toward Tassafaronga where they'll unload under cover before dawn. The destroyers spot the intruder first, their lookouts more alert than expected. Searchlights stab out, sweeping the sea with brilliant white beams, and the night erupts with the bark of 25 mm and 7.7 mm guns firing on full automatic. Tracers arc overhead like fiery rain, beautiful and deadly, crisscrossing the darkness. Gamble jinks hard to port, the boat heeling violently. Spray cascading over the deck in cold sheets. Hold fire until we're inside their screen. He shouts over the roar of engines and gunfire. The plan is simple and brutal. Ignore the destroyers for now. Slip past them in the confusion, and get in among the barges where the big ships can't depress their guns low enough to hit a small, fast-moving target. PT-45 surges through the gauntlet at full speed, weaving between shell splashes. A shell splashes close astern, the concussion drenching everyone in the stern with seawater, but they're through the destroyer line now, committed to the attack. Now the barges loom ahead. Low, squat, steel-plated bows pushing through the swells like determined turtles. Japanese soldiers line the rails, rifles and machine guns flashing orange in the darkness, desperate to repel this unexpected threat. Bullets thud into the plywood hull with sickening cracks, splintering wood around everyone's ears, wounding one sailor in the arm. Range 200 yards, open fire on my mark. Caputo yanks the charging handle back and releases it. The 37 Mini cannon thunders to life with a deep hammering roar. Boom, boom, boom! Far louder and deeper than the 50 calibers chattering alongside it. A different beast entirely. Muzzle flash lights the night orange with every shot, illuminating the nearest Daihatsu in strobing bursts that reveal horrified faces. The first high-explosive shell strikes just below the barge's bridge with a brilliant flash. Steel plate buckles inward with a visible ripple, and the entire forward section erupts in a gout of flame and flying debris. Bodies cartwheeling through the air. Men scream as the second and third rounds punch through the weakened armor, detonating inside the troop compartment where soldiers are packed together with nowhere to hide. The effect is immediate and devastating beyond expectations. Where .50 caliber rounds once sparked harmlessly off the armor plate, the 37 MERS tears gaping holes that let seawater pour in. A fourth shell hits the engine housing directly. Fuel ignites in a whooshing fireball that turns night into day momentarily, turning the barge into a floating torch that illuminates the entire battlefield. Within 30 seconds, the Daihatsu is settling by the bow, soldiers leaping into the shark-infested water, choosing that risk over certain death by fire. Gamble swings the boat hard to starboard, lining up the next target with practiced skill. Caputo traverses the cannon smoothly on its mount, the pedestal mount holding firm despite the violent turns and the recoil. Proof that the improvised installation actually works. Another barge tries to ram, its commander desperate, its bow machine gun spitting fire wildly. Bullets snap past heads, one man taking a graze across his shoulder. But the 37 Mimmer answers first. 3 rapid shots rip across the waterline in a concentrated burst, shredding plating and sending the barge slewing out of control, dead in the water and burning, its steering destroyed. Behind PT-45, PT-59 and PT-37 join the fray, their own newly mounted cannons barking in furious chorus, creating a devastating crossfire. The narrow waters off Tassafaronga become a slaughter pen lit by burning barges. One barge after another takes direct hits, armor pierced, engines destroyed, cargoes of rice and ammunition exploding in secondary blasts that light the horizon like dawn breaking early. The shock waves rippling across the water. Japanese crews, caught completely off guard by this new weapon they've never encountered before. Abandoned ship in panic. Some not even bothering with life preservers in their terror. A destroyer turns back, guns flashing in rapid succession, and Gamble orders full throttle retreat without hesitation. PT-45 races seaward, zigzagging through shell splashes that bracket the boat, the cannon still hot and smoking on the bow, the barrel glowing faintly red. As the boat clears the danger zone and the destroyer gives up the pursuit, there's time to look back. At least 7 barges are confirmed sinking or ablaze, the rest scattering in confusion toward shore or back the way they came. The Tokyo Express has been bloodied, badly, for the first time in months. Back at Tulagi just before sunrise, the crews gather on the dock, exhausted but triumphant, some wounded but all grinning. Word spreads fast through the Mosquito fleet anchored in the harbor, the cannon works. Better than anyone dared hope. Marines at Henderson Field hear the reports by radio and cheer. The pressure on their perimeter just eased a little. Supplies won't reach the enemy positions tonight. And somewhere across the water, Japanese radio operators tap out frantic messages about fast, black boats armed with a terrifying new gun that rips through armor like paper, a weapon they have no defense against. They begin to call them Akuma no Bato, devil boats, a name spoken in fear. January 15th, 1943. The steamy midday sun beats down on Tulagi Harbor mercilessly, turning the water into a mirror of blinding light as crews swarm over half a dozen PT boats tied up along the floating docks like ants on sugar. The air is thick with the smell of fresh welding smoke, aviation gasoline being pumped from drums, and the ever-present rot of the jungle just beyond the palm trees where malaria mosquitoes breed in stagnant water. What started as a desperate improvisation has exploded into a full-blown modification program that has become semi-official. Word of PT-45's devastating raid spread like wildfire through motor torpedo boat squadrons 2 and 3. And now every skipper wants one? No, demands one. For their own boat. Lieutenant Commander John Harley, overseeing the base operations, stands on the dock with a clipboard in hand, barking orders to Seabees and boat crews alike who scramble to keep up with his demands. Strip those cannons out of every wrecked Airacobra you can find, he says to a group of mechanics hauling another 37 Murmur M4 from a P-39 that's been dragged from the Henderson Field boneyard on a flatbed truck. The gun's barrel is still crusted with dried mud from a crash landing weeks ago, but the mechanism is sound, the interior clean. By now they've refined the process considerably. Stronger pedestals forged from destroyer scrap and reinforcing plates, better recoil absorbers to keep the lightweight boats from bucking too hard under fire, and even rudimentary shields welded around the gunner position for splinter protection. Against return fire, the installation of a cannon on PT-109 draws particular attention. Yes, that one. Commanded by a young lieutenant, John F. Kennedy, who will someday be famous. Kennedy himself, sleeves rolled up and face smudged with grease like any enlisted man, helps supervise the installation personally. This'll give those barges hell, he grins to his exec, Lenny Tom, as the cannon is lowered into place with a block and tackle rig. The boat rocks gently under the added weight forward, but the Packard engines idle smoothly, ready to compensate with their tremendous power. Ammo stowage is increased too. Boxes of 37mm clips stacked below decks in specially built racks, each shell a promise of destruction to come. Across the fleet, the transformation accelerates week by week. PT-59 under Lieutenant Brantingham, PT-37 with her veteran crew who've survived since the early days, PT-123 fresh from the States. Boat after boat emerges from the makeshift yard with the distinctive long barrel protruding from the bow like a badge of honor. Some mount the later M9 version, lighter and more reliable with improved feeding mechanisms, but the old M4s still pack the punch that matters most in combat. The 50 calibers remain mounted for anti-personnel work and suppression fire, but the 37 IMAs is the star now. High explosive rounds for barges, armor-piercing shells if a destroyer gets too close and needs discouragement. The Japanese feel the change almost immediately in their operational reports. Night after night, patrols venture into the slot, and the devil boats strike without warning or mercy. February 1, off Vella La Vella, a flotilla of 8 PTs intercepts a Tokyo Express run of 20 Daihatsu, escorted by 4 destroyers carrying vital reinforcements. The big ships open fire first, searchlights sweeping the darkness, but the PTs dart in like hornets, impossible to hit. Cannons roar in staggered volleys, boom, 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 as shells slam into barge after barge with devastating accuracy. One Daihatsu disintegrates in a massive explosion when a 37mm round hits its ammunition cargo directly. The blast so powerful it damages 2 nearby barges. Another beaches itself in flames on Vella La Vella's shore, troops spilling out into the shallows only to face Marine ambushes waiting in the tree line. Japanese reports flood Imperial headquarters in Tokyo. Enemy motor torpedo boats equipped with powerful automatic cannon of unknown type. Frontal armor ineffective against new weapon. Heavy losses sustained nightly. Resupply operations severely compromised. The term Akuma no Bato appears in dispatches with increasing frequency, whispered among crews unloading supplies at Rendova or Kolombangara under cover of darkness. Sailors speak in hushed tones of black ghosts that appear from nowhere. Their single heavy gun flashing like the eye of a demon, ripping through steel and flesh alike before vanishing at impossible speeds into the night. By March, the barge kills mount into the hundreds, each one representing tons of supplies that never reach Japanese positions. The Tokyo Express slows, then falters completely. Supplies trickle instead of flow in sufficient quantities. And Japanese positions weaken from starvation, disease, and lack of ammunition. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto himself notes the threat in conferences, ordering increased destroyer escorts and air cover for barge runs, but the shallow coastal waters limit their effectiveness against the nimble PT boats. The Mosquito fleet, now armed with devil's teeth that bite deep, has turned from hunted to hunter. Back at base, morale soars to heights not seen since before Guadalcanal. Crews paint shark mouths around the cannon muzzles in threatening grins, add kill tallies, tiny barge silhouettes, along the hulls in neat rows, competing for the highest score. But the cost is there too. Paid in blood, PT-109 takes hits during one raid, wood splintering dangerously around Kennedy as he maneuvers through enemy fire. PT-45 loses a gunner to a lucky 25 mm burst that penetrates his shield. Yet the momentum has shifted decisively. Guadalcanal is secure. The airfield expanded, and the push up the Solomons begins in earnest, with the devil boats leading the way into every night engagement. The improvisation that started with a wrecked fighter's nose gun in a boneyard has become legend. A weapon born of desperation that helped break the back of Japanese resupply operations and earned eternal fear in the hearts of those who faced it. Years later, veterans will remember the devil boats and their terrible guns. The desperate innovation that turned the tide when conventional weapons failed, when courage and ingenuity mattered more than doctrine or approval from headquarters far away. August 1, 1943. 1800 hours, Rendova Harbor. The sun hangs low over the western horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and crimson that seem to presage the night's coming violence. PT-109 bobs gently at her moorings, the 37 Merthen mine cannon mounted on her bow now a familiar sight, its barrel freshly cleaned and oiled by the crew. Lieutenant John F. Kennedy stands on the dock, hands on his hips, studying his boat with the critical eye of a commander who knows his vessel and his men intimately after months of patrol. "Skipper, we got our orders," Ensign Leonard Tom calls out, waving a clipboard with the evening's patrol assignment. Kennedy takes it, scans the typed orders quickly. "Blackett Strait tonight. The narrow passage between Kolombangara and Arundel Islands, where Japanese destroyers have been spotted running supplies to Villa. It's dangerous water, confined and dark, perfect for an ambush, but also perfect for getting trapped. Intelligence reports suggest the Tokyo Express will attempt another run tonight, possibly 4 destroyers loaded with troops and material." The crew assembles on deck for the briefing as the tropical twilight deepens. There's Torpedoman Second Class Raymond Albert, the steady hand who maintains their torpedoes. Motor Machinist Mate Second Class Gerard Zinser, who can coax miracles from the temperamental Packard engines. Gunner's Mate Charles Harris, who's claimed the 37 Minier cannon as his personal weapon after. 3 confirmed barge kills. Kennedy addresses them all, his Boston accent clipped and businesslike. "We're going hunting tonight, boys. 4 destroyers expected to transit Blackett Strait around midnight. Division will put 15 boats in the water, will form a picket line across the strait and hit them as they pass." He taps the chart spread on an ammo crate. "Our station is here, northern end near Vanga Vanga. If those tin cans come through, we get first crack at them." The men exchange glances. Destroyers are a different proposition than barges. Bigger, faster, armed with guns that can blow a PT boat out of the water with a single hit. But the 37 mm gives them an edge now. Something to hurt the enemy if torpedoes miss. Harris pats the cannon's breech affectionately. This baby's ready, Skipper. Got 40 rounds of mixed heat and uploaded. As darkness falls completely, PT-109 casts off and joins the stream of boats heading out from Rendova. The formation spreads out across Blackett Strait, each boat taking its assigned station. Engines idling quietly to minimize noise and exhaust signatures. Kennedy positions his boat near a small islet, using the landmass to break up their silhouette against the starlit water. The wait begins. The interminable, nerve-wracking wait that precedes every night engagement. 2,340 hours. The radio crackles softly, all boats. This is base. Radar contact, 4 large vessels entering straight from northwest, speed 25 knots. Stand by. Kennedy feels his pulse quicken. This is it. The Tokyo Express is running right on schedule. Around the strait, PT boats spring to life, engines revving up from idle to attack speed. The plan is simple. Wait until the destroyers are committed to the narrow waters, then strike from multiple directions simultaneously. Overwhelm their defenses with numbers. But plans rarely survive contact with the enemy. The lead destroyer, later identified as Amagiri, spots the PT boats earlier than expected. Her searchlight blazes to life, a brilliant beam that sweeps across the water like the finger of an angry god, catching PT-157 in its glare. Instantly, the destroyer's 5-inch guns open up with thunderous reports that echo across the strait. Shells splash around the exposed PT boat, sending geysers of water 50 feet into the air. Kennedy guns his engines, bringing PT-109 around in a tight turn, aiming to get a firing position on Amagiri's flank. The 37 mm cannon traverses smoothly as Harris tracks the destroyer, waiting for the range to close. At 800 yards, the big ship looks invincible. Over 300 feet of steel cutting through the water at high speed, her superstructure bristling with weapons. But Kennedy has learned that even destroyers can be hurt if you're bold enough. All ahead flank. Prepare to fire torpedoes. Kennedy's orders are crisp, cutting through the chaos. The boat surges forward, wooden hull pounding against the waves as she accelerates past 40 knots. The wind tears at clothing, spray drenches everyone on deck. Amagiri's secondary guns swing toward them, 25 mm automatic cannons that can shred a PT boat like tissue paper if they hit. At 600 yards, tracers begin to arc toward PT-109. Harris opens fire with the 37 mm, the heavy cannon booming rhythmically. Boom, 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 sending high explosive shells toward the destroyer's bridge and gun mounts. The shells impact against the steel hull, some sparking off armor, others punching through lighter plating to detonate inside with bright flashes. It's not enough to sink a destroyer, but it's enough to disrupt fire control, force gun crews to take cover, buy precious seconds. Fire torpedoes, all tubes. Kennedy shouts. The Mark 8 torpedoes splash into the water, 4 white wakes heading toward the destroyer's predicted position. PT-109 heels hard to starboard, Kennedy attempting to break away from Amagiri's line of fire. But the destroyer's captain, Commander Hanami Kohei, makes a split-second decision that changes everything. Instead of turning away from the torpedoes, he turns toward them, accelerating, using his superior speed to close the distance before the torpedoes can arm themselves. It happens with terrifying speed. Amagiri's bow wave grows mountainous as she bears down directly at PT-109, her intention clear, ramming speed. Kennedy realizes the danger too late, already committed to his turn. Engines at full throttle but the heavy destroyer moving impossibly fast. Brace for impact. Someone screams, but there's no time. The collision is catastrophic. Amagiri's reinforced bow strikes PT-109 just forward of the starboard torpedo tube, the impact accompanied by a hideous grinding, splintering sound as wood and light metal give way before tons of steel. The PT boat is literally sliced in half, the forward section, including the 37mm cannon mount, sheared away completely. The bow section, still containing Harris and 2 other crewmen, sinks almost immediately, dragged down by the weight of the cannon and the rushing water. The stern section, containing Kennedy and most of the crew, somehow remains afloat, the buoyant plywood hull and sealed compartments keeping it from following the bow into the depths. Fuel from ruptured tanks spreads across the water, and then, horror, it ignites. Flames race across the surface, turning the night orange, threatening to immolate the survivors clinging to the wreckage. Kennedy acts on instinct, diving into the burning water and pulling injured men away from the flames. Motor machinist mate Patrick McMahon has been badly burned, his skin seared by flaming gasoline. Kennedy grabs the straps of McMahon's life jacket in his teeth and begins towing him away from the inferno, swimming strongly despite exhaustion and his own chronic back pain. Around them, other survivors gather. 11 men total from the original 13-man crew, Harris and 2 others lost in the forward section. Amagiri doesn't stop, continuing her high-speed run through the strait, her crew perhaps not even realizing they've just cut an American PT boat in half. Other PT boats in the area, seeing the massive fire, assume PT-109 has been sunk with all hands and withdraw from the engagement as the remaining destroyers complete their supply run and escape back toward Rabaul. By 0200 hours, Blackett Strait falls quiet, except for the crackling of dying flames on the water and the distant sound of artillery from the front lines. Kennedy and his crew cling to the floating stern section as it drifts with the current. As dawn approaches, they realize they're being pushed toward Japanese-held Kolombangara. Kennedy makes the decision to abandon the wreckage and swim for a small islet he can see in the growing light. Plum Pudding Island, barely 100 yards across, covered in scrub vegetation. Towing McMahon the entire way, taking turns with other able-bodied swimmers to help the injured, the crew makes the swim, reaching the island exhausted just as the sun breaks the horizon. On the island, they hide from Japanese patrol boats during the day, suffering from exposure, thirst, and injuries. Kennedy spends that night swimming alone to Ferguson Passage, hoping to signal any PT boats on patrol, but none appear. The next night, he tries again with Ensign George Ross, but again finds nothing. It's not until the 4th day, when 2 Solomon Islander coastwatchers, Byukugasa and Ironi Kumana, find them and carry a message carved on a coconut shell back to Allied forces, that rescue finally comes. When PT-157 picks them up on August 8th, Kennedy and his surviving crew are emaciated, sunburned, and traumatized. Harris is mourned as lost with the bow section, along with Andrew Jackson Kirksey and Harold Marney. The 37 Miramiz cannon that Harris had tended so carefully rests somewhere on the bottom of Blackett Strait. Its brief career ended. The loss of PT-109 and the harrowing survival story that follows becomes famous, eventually helping launch Kennedy's political career. But in August 1943, it's simply another tragedy in a long series of night battles. A reminder that even with improved weapons like the 37 Nimitz cannon, the PT boats remain desperately vulnerable to the superior firepower and armor of enemy destroyers. The Devil boats can hurt the enemy, but they can also be destroyed in seconds if they miscalculate. Yet the mission of the Devil boats continues. Even as PT-109's crew recovers, other boats with their bow-mounted cannons prowl the slot, hunting barges, skirmishing with destroyers, slowly strangling Japanese supply lines throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. September 12, 1943. Calvertville Base, Treasury Islands. The PT boat maintenance facility has evolved significantly from the crude improvisations at Tulagi. What was once a collection of tents and jury-rigged workshops is now a semi-permanent installation with proper machine shops, welding stations, and even a small dry dock constructed from pontoons and steel beams salvaged from sunken Japanese ships. The transformation reflects how central the 37-MAR armed PT boats have become to naval operations in the Solomons. Lieutenant Commander Robert Bulkley Jr., cousin of the famous John Bulkley, who led the Philippine PT boats, oversees the modification program that has become officially sanctioned by Comersapac, Commander Aircraft Solomon Islands. He stands in the machine shop, examining the latest iteration of the cannon mount with Chief Warrant Officer Thomas Mack Mackenzie, the genius behind many of the improvements. The problem with the early mounts, Mackenzie explains, wiping oil from his hands with a rag, was the recoil. That M4 kicks like a mule, and on these lightweight hulls, it was beating the boats to death. We've lost 2 boats, not to enemy action, but to structural failure around the mount after extended firing. The new mount before them represents months of trial and error. Constructed from properly forged steel rather than scrap, it features hydraulic recoil buffers salvaged from damaged Marine Corps artillery pieces, a rotating base that allows a 180-degree traverse instead of the limited arc of early models, and most importantly, a reinforced keel plate that distributes the recoil stress across the entire bow structure rather than concentrating it at a single point. We're also upgrading the ammunition capacity, Mackenzie continues, leading Bulkley to a modified PT-191 that sits in the maintenance slip. Standard load is now 60 rounds instead of 30, 40 He and 20 AP. The ammo boxes are below deck, protected by sandbags. We learned that lesson the hard way when PT-68 took a hit in her ready ammunition and damn near blew herself up. The modifications extend beyond just the cannon. Gun crews have developed tactics specifically for the weapon, documented in hastily typed manuals that circulate between squadrons. The optimal engagement range for barges is determined to be 300-500 yards, close enough for accuracy, far enough to evade return fire. Against destroyers, the tactic is hit and run, close to 600 yards, fire a dozen rounds at the superstructure and fire control systems to disrupt their targeting, launch torpedoes, then break away at maximum speed while the 50 calibers and 37 Marine provide suppressing fire. Gunners mate First Class Anthony Tony Marconi, veteran of 15 combat patrols and 8 confirmed barge kills, conducts training for newly arrived crews on the firing range set up in a small cove. Young sailors fresh from the States watch in awe as he demonstrates the weapon. The cannon, roaring as it sends shells into a target barge anchored 400 yards offshore. "You gotta lead the target," Marconi shouts over the noise. These shells aren't instant like the 50s. At 500 yards, you're looking at about 2 seconds flight time. If the barge is moving at 10 knots, you lead by 3 boat lengths. And you fire in bursts, 3 to 5 rounds, then shift aim. Don't just hold the trigger down, because this ain't the movies. The barrel overheats, accuracy goes to shit. One of the new gunners, a baby-faced kid from Iowa named Jimmy Kowalski, raises his hand nervously. "Sir, what if we're taking fire while we're shooting?" Marconi grins, a hard expression earned through months of night combat. "Then you shoot faster, kid, and you trust your skipper to keep the boat moving. Stand still out there, and you're dead. Simple as that. These boats are made of plywood and hope. Our armor is speed and darkness." The training extends to coordination between boats. The PT squadrons have learned that massed attacks work best, with boats working in pairs or trios to bracket targets in crossfire. PT-157 and PT-171 developed what they call the hammer and anvil. One boat draws the enemy's attention and fire, maneuvering aggressively, while the second boat approaches from a different angle and delivers the killing blow with the 37 Measmal before the enemy can shift their defenses. By October 1943, intelligence reports from captured Japanese documents revealed the psychological impact of the Devil boats. A diary recovered from a dead Japanese naval officer on Schwazoo reads, "The American torpedo boats are demons. Their gun tears through our barges as if they were paper. We wait in terror for the night patrols. Sleep is impossible knowing they are hunting in the darkness. Many of our men refuse to board the Daihatsu anymore, preferring to face court-martial than certain death at sea. The Japanese military attempts to adapt. New Daihatsu models appear with thicker armor, up to 25 min in some cases. But the 37 min armor-piercing rounds punch through even these enhanced defenses at close range. Japanese destroyers begin carrying additional 25 min AA guns specifically to counter PT boat attacks. And some barges are fitted with captured American 50 caliber machine guns. But the initiative has shifted decisively. Back at Calvertville, as another converted PT boat, PT-323, fresh from the States, receives her 37 mm installation, Bulkley reviews the statistics with satisfaction. Since November 1942, PT boats armed with the 37 mm cannon have sunk or severely damaged over 400 Japanese barges, dozens of smaller craft, and have even scored damaging hits on 3 destroyers and 1 light cruiser. The cost has been high. 20 PT boats lost to enemy action. Over 100 sailors killed or wounded. But the strategic impact is undeniable. The Japanese supply situation in the northern Solomons has become critical. Garrisons on Kolombangara, Choiseul, and Bougainville are slowly starving, their ammunition stocks depleted, their ability to resist the coming American offensive severely compromised. The Tokyo Express, once unstoppable, now runs only irregularly and at tremendous risk. Admiral William Bull Halsey, commanding South Pacific Forces, sends a commendation to the PT squadrons. The initiative shown in developing and deploying the 37 mm cannon on PT boats represents the finest tradition of American naval ingenuity. These devil boats have achieved results far beyond their size, significantly contributing to our campaign success. Well done. As the sun sets over Calvertville on that September evening, the maintenance crews prepare another 3 boats for night patrol. The 37 mm cannons are cleaned, oiled, and loaded with fresh ammunition. Skippers brief their crews on the night's mission. A sweep up to Vella La Vella, where Japanese stragglers are still attempting evacuation. The engines rumble to life, and one by one, the devil boats slip out into the gathering darkness, their deadly teeth ready to bite once more. The improvisation that began with a desperate idea at Henderson Field has become a proven weapon system, a testament to the ingenuity and courage of the men who fight in these fragile boats against a determined enemy. But the war is far from over, and the devil boats will face new challenges as the campaign pushes northward toward Rabaul and beyond. November 28, 1943. 0200 hours. Waters off Empress Augusta Bay, Bougainville. The night is darker than usual, heavy clouds obscuring even the faint starlight, turning the ocean into an infinite void of black. Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 11, composed of 8 PT boats including the newly arrived PT-321 and veteran boats like PT-183, forms a picket line across the entrance to the bay, their engines idling quietly as they wait in ambush. The strategic situation has reached a critical point. American forces landed on Bougainville 3 weeks ago, establishing a beachhead at Cape Torokina against fierce Japanese resistance. The Japanese, desperate to reinforce their positions and push the Americans back into the sea, have organized what intelligence calls Operation RO, a massive effort to land troops and supplies directly into Empress Augusta Bay under cover of darkness, protected by a powerful naval force including heavy cruisers. Lieutenant Robert Shearer, commanding PT-321, studies the phosphorescent glow of his compass as he maintains station. His boat is one of the newest additions to the Devil boat fleet. Her 37 mm M9 cannon, an improved model with better reliability, mounted on a state-of-the-art pedestal that allows almost 220-degree traverse. The crew is experienced, transferred from PT-47 after that boat was retired due to hull damage, and they've quickly adapted to their new vessel. Radar contact? The radarman whispers urgently, his voice cutting through the soft rumble of idling engines. Multiple large vessels, bearing 345, range 12,000 yards in closing. Count is, Christ, skipper, I'm reading at least 20 contacts, mixed sizes. Shearer feels his mouth go dry. 20 vessels, this isn't a normal Tokyo Express run, this is an invasion fleet. He keys the radio mic. All boats, this is PT-321. We've got multiple contacts inbound. Appears to be major enemy force. Recommend we report and engage per doctrine. Stand by. The doctrine for such situations is clear but terrifying. PT boats are to attack aggressively, disrupting enemy formations and providing targeting information for friendly surface forces, even at the cost of their own survival. Shearer knows that somewhere to the south, Rear Admiral Aaron Merrill's Task Force 39, light cruisers and destroyers, is steaming north to intercept this Japanese force. The PT boat's job is to slow the enemy down, sting them, make them react. Buy time for the big guns to arrive. All ahead full. Battle stations. Load app for the first magazine. We might be facing heavy ships. Shearer's orders are calm despite the adrenaline surging through his system. PT-321's engines roar to life, the boat leaping forward as she accelerates to 35 knots, heading directly toward the massive enemy formation. As the range closes to 8,000 yards, the Japanese force resolves in the darkness, and it's worse than anyone expected. Leading the formation are two heavy cruisers, their distinctive pagoda-style superstructures visible as dark shadows against the slightly lighter sky. Behind them, 4 destroyers and a mass of transport vessels, landing barges, and what appear to be submarine chasers converted to troop carriers. The Japanese spot the approaching PT boats almost simultaneously. Searchlights blaze to life, multiple beams sweeping the water like the fingers of giants. PT-183 is caught first, illuminated brilliantly, and instantly every Japanese gun that can bear opens fire. The thunder is apocalyptic. 8-inch guns from the cruisers, 5-inch from the destroyers, smaller automatic weapons creating a storm of steel and fire. PT-183's skipper, Lieutenant Howard Bauer, doesn't hesitate. Instead of fleeing the searchlights, he turns directly toward the nearest cruiser, later identified as Haguro, at full throttle. His 37 Merman cannon opens up at 3,000 yards, far beyond its effective range. But the tracers serve a purpose. They draw even more fire toward PT-183, allowing the other boats to approach undetected. Shearer watches in horrified admiration as PT-183 closes to 1,500 yards, her cannon now firing effectively, shells sparking off Haguro's armored belt, but a few punching through lighter plating around the superstructure. Then PT-183 launches her torpedoes in a full spread and attempts to turn away. She almost makes it. A massive 8-inch shell strikes the water 50 feet from her stern, the near miss detonating with a concussive blast that lifts the entire boat out of the water. When she comes down, her back is broken, the wooden hull cracking amidships. She begins to sink immediately, searchlights still pinning her in place as her crew abandons ship. But PT-183's sacrifice creates the opening. PT-321 and 5 other boats roar in from multiple directions, converging on the Japanese formation like wolves on a wounded buffalo. Shearer picks his target, a Fubuki-class destroyer on the formation's eastern flank, and closes to 800 yards before opening fire with the 37 Miss. The improved M9 cannon performs beautifully, the hydraulic recoil system keeping the boat stable as armor-piercing shells hammer into the destroyer's thin-skinned superstructure. The Japanese destroyer, Suzukaze, reacts violently, turning to bring her main batteries to bear. But the PT boat is too close, too fast, weaving through the water at 40 knots. Shearer's gunner, Chief Petty Officer Richard Dick Morrison, walks his fire up the destroyer's hull. Shells detonating against fire control radars, searchlight mounts, and bridge windows. A lucky shot penetrates the destroyer's forward magazine ventilation system. Not enough to cause a catastrophic explosion, but enough to start fires that force the forward gun mount out of action. Torpedoes away, Shearer shouts as his torpedoman launches a spread of 4 Mark 8s at point-blank range. At least one finds its mark. A massive explosion amidships on Suzukaze. The blast visible even through the chaos of battle. A tower of water and flame that climbs 200 feet into the air. The destroyer slews to port, losing way. Clearly damaged, but not sinking. Around the bay, similar dramas play out. PT-169 engages a troop transport, her 37 immersed, setting the wooden superstructure ablaze before she's driven off by destroyer fire. PT-190 and PT-159 work together, pinning down another destroyer in crossfire while their torpedoes run true, at least 2 hits confirmed, possibly 3, and the destroyer begins to list heavily to starboard. But the cost is terrible. PT-183 is gone, her crew in the water. PT-169 takes a direct hit from a 5-inch shell that detonates in her engine room, killing 4 men instantly and leaving her dead in the water, slowly sinking. PT-321 herself is hit multiple times by automatic weapons fire, her plywood hull showing dozens of puncture holes, 1 sailor wounded when a 25 mm round punches through the cockpit. Then, at 02:45 hours, salvation arrives in the form of Task Force 39. The American cruiser's 6-inch guns light up the horizon with rippling salvos, their fire control radars guiding shells with devastating accuracy onto the Japanese heavy cruisers. The Battle of Empress Augusta Bay has begun in earnest, and the PT boat's role shifts to search and rescue, pulling survivors from the water, both American and Japanese, and guiding friendly forces through the chaos. By dawn, the battle is over. The Japanese force has been turned back, suffering 1 cruiser sunk, 2 destroyers sunk, and multiple transports destroyed. Their attempt to reinforce Bougainville has failed catastrophically. American casualties include PT-183 lost with most of her crew, PT-169 scuttled after the battle due to irreparable damage, and 42 sailors killed or wounded across the PT boat squadron. But the mission is accomplished. The beachhead at Cape Torokina holds. Japanese reinforcements never reach the island, and the devil boats, bloodied but unbroken, have once again proven their worth in the most desperate circumstances. Lieutenant Shearer, guiding his damaged PT-321 back to Calvertville as the sun rises over Bougainville, stares at the 37 mm cannon on his bow. The barrel is scorched black from rapid firing, the mount scarred by near misses, but the weapon still functions. Beside him, Morrison tends to the wounded sailor, applying pressure to a shrapnel wound while another crewman steers the boat. "That gun saved our ass tonight," Morrison says quietly, not looking up from his medical work. "We got close enough to hurt them because we could shoot back, keep their heads down. Without it, we'd have been just targets." Shearer nods silently, thinking of Lieutenant Bauer and the crew of PT-183, thinking of all the devil boats and their crews who fought and died in these dark waters since that first improvised mounting at Henderson Field 11 months ago. The 37mm cannon, pulled from a wrecked fighter in desperation, has become the symbol of the PT boat's transformation from hunted to hunter, from mosquitoes to wolves with steel teeth. The campaign continues, pushing northward toward Rabaul. But tonight the devil boats have earned their rest, and their legend grows darker and more fearsome in the whispered conversations of Japanese sailors from the Solomons to Truk.